Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another update. In this fast and furious world that we live in, it is the 15th of April, and we finally got spring. The snow's melting off. That we had the nice little, we got up to 17.5 degrees in the beginning of April, then we wound up with snow, because everything had been cleared out of snow for a while, and then we're transitioning towards summer, or early summer tomorrow, as the temperature's heading up into the 20s. So, welcome to Western Russia, northwestern Russia particularly, where you don't like the season, just wait a while. I'm sure it'll change, maybe a couple times in the same day. Had that happen before. So, what do we have on the world arena? Well, one, we got some statistics out on Kursk. Yes, there's the one monastery, St. Nicholas's Monastery, that the new rhyme and reason PR machine of the West is labeling as the 300, the 300 Spartans, the defenders of the Western culture against the Russian Mongol, whatever, Yeah, okay. Let's put it another way. Murderous Nazi pagans who are apt to have robbed, and at least the ones that have escaped out of the encirclement are selling icons, the remains of saints, and so on the black net or just straight up on Amazon. Why not? Because you can do that when you steal and rob and pillage everything from another society. That's the West way, after all. Western culture. Look at the museums. There's an old English joke. Daddy, why aren't the pyramids, the Egyptian pyramids in the Museum of London? Well, son, because they're too big to steal. Yes. But the frescoes off of the Parthenon weren't. Which, by the way, if anybody ever reads about the Parthenon wasn't always looking as spiffy as it is today. Basically, everything's gone out of it. The Parthenon was actually very well preserved up into the middle of the 1700s. Right, it wasn't any longer a shrine or a temple to Athena, the Athenian Parthenon. It became a Orthodox church. But when the Muslim Caliphate of the Ottoman Turks took it over, I don't know if they ever converted it into a mosque or not, but they were having a little war with the Venetians. So they decided to place all their powder as their main depot in the Parthenon, because they figured that it couldn't be penetrated. Yeah, it could. Phoenicians got a couple of cannonballs right through the walls with their fleet, and kaboom. Now, to the credit of the Greeks, it's still standing. Yeah, it's hollowed out. The interior has been destroyed. A lot of those sculptures fell off the walls, but it's still standing. I mean, you can imagine how much black powder is in there, because it was the main depot of the Turkish garrison in Athens. So just a little side note down history's lane. I always find all these things absolutely fascinating. So, yeah. So the numbers of Western in the NATO-run invasion of Russia, where it's all Ukrainians. It's all Ukrainians started off. Well, except that it's planned out of directly out of Germany by the U.S. Command. The NATO-run invasion of Russia in Kursk didn't just wipe out about 70,000+ Ukrainians. It also sent to Saint Bandera almost 2,000 Poles. And let me say a few words on Poles. I mean, how pathetically disgusting of a subhuman do you have to be to go defend Banderites? The people that put Stefan Bandera statues everywhere. The people that declare Stefan Bandera, by the way, Zelensky did this, as the father of the country. And his birthday is now a national holiday. The people, Stefan Bandera, that butchered 250,000 Poles. I mean, you want to know what they did to just look at the archival photographs. They cut out the babies out of women's arms and put them out of wounds and put them in the corpses' arms, baby and mother, and they took photos of that. They took Polish children. They after butchering their families in front of them, and they tied them to trees with barbed wire and left them to freeze and die in the cold. I mean, the amount of massacre and murder, never mind what they did to Russians, Jews, Hungarians, to the not correct Western Ukrainians that didn't see eye to eye with them, and so on and so on. But they ran the Poles out of Western, what is today Western Ukraine. And these Poles, 2,000 of them died defending the people that murdered their own people less than 80 years ago. Think about that. Think about it. What kind of respect can you have for anybody like that? It's a betrayal. It's a betrayal of the Polish people, of Polish history, and the suffering from those people by the hands of Bandera and Shuhevich. And now you go and die for these people? You're subhuman. You're not a real human being. Because any real human being would be able to think a little better than that. And go, well, no. But they went and died. Congratulations. Hope you burn in hell with Saint Bandera there, because you more than deserved it. It's the same thing with the Jews, by the way, who go in from Israel to fight against Russians in defense of Bandera. Same thing, same animal right there. And Israel lets them out, and Israel lets them out with weapons, because those are Israeli assault rifles on the videos with them. Netanyahu's government is fully aware of what they're doing. And they're allied with Bandera, with the Banderites. And again, so Jews who were butchered by Bandera, their grandchildren are now fighting to defend the Bandera state. So anyways, so we got about 2,000 dead Poles. You got about... almost a 1,000 dead Colombians. These people, Colombia is a nation that just goes around and dies everywhere because they got nothing else to do with their time. Build a better country. They are just the meat for every dog's war. Ask the Saudis how many Colombians dropped dead in Yemen, or ask the Yemenis. They'll probably have pretty good figures because they were massacring the Colombian mercs left and right. There were no mercy for these morons. So now they decided to find another place to fertilize with their remains. Russian old land. Okay, whatever. 1,200 Georgians. These are the Saakashvili animals that the U.S. helped train. I was there. I was a foreign affairs officer in Georgia. I didn't train these guys. I knew the guys that started the training. I hung out with them in the bars and we drank beer. The special forces guys that started, and then they left after they got it up and running, and it was taken over by U.S. Marines. So I knew these guys. And I knew the type of people that they were handpicking for these two brigades. Now, this was before Saakashvili came to power, it was under Shevardnadze, but these two brigades that they created were the ones that helped Saakashvili gain power. And then good chunk of them got wiped out in 2008 fighting Russia. And these guys, they were videotaping themselves massacring the South Asian population, shooting at civilians, shooting at civilian cars, driving by down roads, just blasting the main gun rounds off their tanks into apartment buildings, just for shits and giggles. So one of them I remember, and by the way, if you're going to commit genocide, take away the phones from your morons that are going to be doing your henchmen. They're going to be doing that, because what happened afterwards was the FSB came through, picked up the phones off the dead Georgian corpses from that were doing the war crimes, the Saakashvili's little American trained animals. And then put the film together, where they're screaming, I'm the god of war, just blasting away rounds into the apartment buildings, women and children running left and right screaming. So yeah, so these are the Saakashvili animals. I'm not blaming Georgians in general on this. Believe me, I'm not. But the Saakashvili, once Saakashvili lost power, a lot of his enforcers and henchmen, they all ran off into Ukraine. Look at the time, the history. I mean, Saakashvili himself became mayor of, or governor of Odessa province, and was styling himself the future leader of Ukraine. I mean, these guys are that they're Georgian, it's their nationality, but it's not their allegiance. Their allegiance is to their paymasters first and foremost, which is NATO, which is a CIA. I mean, that's to they're mercs basically. They'll murder and kill wherever they can. If they can gain power in some country and grab power, of course, that's even better. But otherwise, they'll go fight. So there's 1,200 of these Saakashvili animals that got wiped out in Kursk. Better for the gene pool, the Georgian gene pool, and the human gene pool in general. Over 150 Brits went to meet Saint Bandera, and by the way, 90 Americans, or 89 Americans to be sure. There may be more. You don't know how many wounded got out too, so they'll still. I'm sure the count will be ticking up because they're still uncovering bodies all over the place. These guys got wiped out. So there. By the way, so for the combat lawyer Graham, oh, this is the best deal ever. We spend the money, and Ukrainians kill Russians, and no Americans ever died. Well, there's 89 corpses, but you can come pick up. And I've said this before, and I'm not the only one with this good idea. Vladimir Solovyov stated the same way. Every time any of these mercs get killed, the Russian government should lay their bodies out in a coffin. We don't take souvenirs, and we don't of corpses. We don't beat up on corpses. We don't fight the dead. With full honors, put their coffins right in front of the embassies with the flag of that country draped over it. Come take away your citizens. There you go. It would make one hell of a view. But our government doesn't want to do that. I would do it in a heartbeat. There you go. There's your mercs. There's your not a single American has died. It's the best deal we can get, Graham. There's plenty of those of American mercs that have died. And plenty more that are armless or legless. Should have been headless for what they were doing. Consider how many women and children they massacred. Villages they wiped out. I mean, granted, a lot of these settlements were tiny, but anybody that didn't make it out, they killed quite a lot of people. Quite a lot of people. So no mercy for these guys. So these 300 are left, and they're a mix of penal battalions. Penal battalions in this case, I don't mean they've been punished for bad behavior on the battlefield and they have to recoup their honor. I'm talking about straight out of penal colonies. Criminals, straight up murderers, rapists, etc. that have been given pardons and formed into battalions and sent in to fight and do whatever they want to the local population. So it's a mix of them and 82nd Airborne Brigade. Yeah, they named the 82nd Airborne Brigade, and I think the 90th Airborne Brigade. So they're stuck in the monastery. It's somewhere between 200 and 400 of them. So there's one of their officers out of the Airborne Brigade started negotiations for surrender. They can get out by foot. I mean, they're not fully surrounded, but it's not exactly flat terrain. And all the roads are under fire control by the Russian side. So getting out by foot, it's a long walk, and further down the cauldron is closing, and they will be shot. Welcome to night vision sensors and so on. So getting out is a very difficult concept. Sure, I mean, if they all break out in different directions, some of them will get out, most will get destroyed. But that's the way life is. So these guys have decided they murdered their officer that was in negotiations. They killed a couple other airborne guys, probably more likely the criminal battalion. They've got nothing looking for them at them. They at best, they can expect to be serving 20 years in a Russian prison colony somewhere in Siberia for the things that they've done. Unfortunately, we do have the death penalty in Russia, but it's under moratorium now since I think 92 or 93, somewhere around there. Should be brought back. Most people want to bring back. Hasn't been brought back. These guys more than deserve a good hanging for the mass murder, the criminal activity, for the things that they've done to the civilian population, and on both sides of the borders. But the majority of the Sunni population is Russian. So, anyways, that's what we get. So these guys, they're being blown up by the Western media. Well, once from the Russian side, this is a very holy monastery. The ground is holy. We've got Easter or Orthodox Pascha and Catholic Easter coming up on Sunday. This is Holy Week, the Passion of the Christ. And these guys, they murdered their officer who was trying to do the right thing, and they shot up and murdered his companions. So they're being cleared out now. And unfortunately, the monastery is going to, of course, suffer. Already has suffered. The reason they make their stands in holy places because they know Russians are not going to shoot up churches if they can avoid it. And these guys are not Christian. They're anti-Christian, pagans, other whatever. They destroy these. They raid the churches. They sell the icons and whatever other paraphernalia they can get on the black markets. They murder the priests. They burn the churches down, or they artillery shell them. You gotta understand, fighting these guys, they continue shelling cities, right? Gorlovka, Yasnovata, Donetsk. They don't have enough artillery shells to fight, but they have enough to keep shooting at civilians. These are the type of demonic entities that we're dealing with here. You would think that priority would be every shot is for the battlefield, but no, they still set aside shots to try to kill civilians. But they do use churches because of the walls in the churches are thick. Yeah, talking about walls about that thick. I mean, they're seriously built, so they use them as strong points. So, people that supposedly are Orthodox Christian, which aren't. I can't imagine as an Orthodox Christian going, okay, yeah, sure, this is good. If he's really an Orthodox Christian, an Orthodox Christian church. So anyways, that's a situation there. We've got Merz, Germany, you're on countdown to the end of the German project. Merz said that he's going to send in the Tauruses. Taurus is basically a declaration of war. It's Germans firing directly on Russia. I guess maybe he wants to refurbish central Berlin. I'm sure an Oreshnik here and an Oreshnik there will do a lot. They do tend to burst pipes from the impact. So, Berlin may be without water and electricity for a while afterwards, but, oh well. And the shite may be showering out of the sewer system that's blasted too. But, it gets rid of the rats at least. They're infested. So there's that. So Germany, you are on borrowed time, unless you suddenly grow brain and do something radical to make sure this doesn't happen. You got about 12 months at the most, 8 to 12 months. That's what it's going to take you, from what analysts are saying, between forming a government and sending these weapons and yeah. Okay, so there's that. The main thing I want to talk about, too, is Trump and the Liberation Day panic. Well, not the panic on the Euros and other countries. The European Union is screwed because it has no other it has nobody else that will supply it with the resources it needs. Now that the U.S. has said, you're going to pay. Now, they've cut all the ties with Russia that supplied them with everything. You're not talking just oil and gas. I mean, all basic commodities, mid-range value chain products like airplane parts, automobile parts, and so on and so on. So Europe is absolutely screwed. But oh well. I'll try not to shed too many tears. You know why? Because Europeans deserve it. And I'll tell you why they deserve it. because they sit there and they allow these things is sitting in Belgium to do the things that they do to them. Now you've got Slovakia, you've got Hungary that have said no, and they've stood their ground. And my hat's off to them. We'll see about the Austrians, because supposedly the Austrians do the same thing, but there's not that much seen out of them yet. So we'll see what the new government brings. But the panic I'm talking about, of course, is okay. Is in the bond market. So the stock market will ignore it. The stock market and Main Street, Wall Street and Main Street are not the same thing, though they are interconnected. You can't fully separate them out. But the problem here is the bond market, the treasury bills. What is not going what is not being overly reported on is the U.S. has $9 trillion in 20-year bonds that are up for refinancing this year. $9 trillion. So a fourth of the U.S. debt. Actually, even more than a fourth of the U.S. debt. Actually, no, it is a fourth of the U.S. debt, just a little bit less than that. That's what, 37 trillion, and growing at about $1 trillion every 3 months, 90 days. The U.S. is spending right now over $1 trillion servicing the percents on those treasury bills, the interest rates. Most Americans, they tend to drop off on, oh, that's bad, but okay, why? Well, why? Here's the why of it. You're not only not lowering your debt volume, but you do have to service that percent. It's like a credit card, except you have to pay it every month. You can't just let it pile on. It doesn't work like that, like a credit card, a civilian credit card. You have to service it, otherwise people dump those treasury bills, and then you've got real big problems. So you're obligated every month to pay out on those treasury bills. Every month, without exception. Otherwise, you're in default. To pay those treasury bills is $1 trillion right now. Not counting these $9 trillion that have to go into refinancing. So refinancing in this case is you have to sell more debt, more treasury bills to pay off those $9 trillion because you can't pay them off. The problem is for 30 years, the U.S. had historically low rates. Well, not the U.S., the whole West has had it. Most of Europe started coming out of it before the U.S. Historically low rates are basically almost 0%. So 0% is free money for the government. I'll give you a treasury bill for $20 at 0%. That means I don't have to pay you, or near 0%. I don't have to pay you almost anything or anything at all per month. And in 5 or 20 years, I'll give you the $100 back, or if it's a $100 bill, treasury bill for 10 years, for 5 years, for 6 months. At the end of it, I'll just give you that money back. But there's still inflation. So $100 today is not $100 tomorrow. It's definitely not $100 in 5 years or 10 years. It may still have a $100 bill, but it's not buying even nearly what it bought today. So I got free money. And what I'm giving you back is worth a lot less. Great. Well, here's the problem, is the historic rates eventually came back. It was a very long trip. Normally the dips in the historic rates never lasted this long, but it lasted an extremely long time. Right when that massive debt increase became the U.S. But free money. Woo-hoo! And Trump was no exception on this, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. Don't think the Trump first administration was some kind of exception on this. They piled on debt not too badly either. Not as much as Biden did, but Obama piled on debt. Every American president piles on debt. It's free money, baby. It's free money until it's not. Remember the magical monetary theory? The modern monetary theory? Debt doesn't matter? Yeah, because it's not modern. This happened before every collapse. They modern. Oh, we've decided that debt doesn't matter anymore. Well, it does. So you have $1 trillion that has to be spent on covering the interest per year on that debt that is already there. But you don't have that $1 trillion. So you have to borrow another $1 trillion to cover that debt. Well, that debt that you borrow, that $1 trillion also now has to be covered, and so on and so on and so on. Now you have $9 trillion it has to be refinanced. At 4+%, that's another $500 billion in financing that you have to spend. So now you're up from $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion. How do you get around that? You lower the bond rates. How do you lower the bond rates? By making sure that people so demand the bonds, the treasury bills, that it lowers the bond rate because everybody wants in, so they're willing to take it lower and lower and lower to almost zero. How do you do that? You start a world panic. Because America has the best, most stable treasury bonds ever. You can trust the U.S. government. If you're an idiot, you can trust the U.S. government, and we'll be there. Don't worry about it, baby. Well, at least that's what the economic policy. Stephen Merrim, who is the head of the finance team for Trump, one of the brain trusts, he put up an article. Yeah, I love this. America provides two goods, international free use goods, stability, and the U.S. dollar. You should all have to pay us, buy our bonds, invest in our country, or just send us money. Write us a check. Send us money to the U.S. government. Pay us a check because we're providing a good, world stability, the world rules-based order. We make the rules and you get the order. Oh, and then we'll blow up lots of countries, force mass migration, economic collapse, and so on. Yeah, that's your stability. And the US dollar with which we can buy lots of your real goods for crap. Debt that we're never going to pay off for you. Well, the problem is sooner or later investors start to really get worried. They're either going to get worried because that guy's got so much debt, he ain't going to give me my money back. I don't know if I want to give him that money anymore there. No, now for 3%. Well, maybe 4%. But now I'm thinking he's got any more debt. Let's try 6, 7, 8, 20, 30, 50, 60, 100. You don't think it can happen? Look at Italy. Look at Spain. Look at Greece. Look at Cyprus. The difference with all those countries is you had Germany buying out their debts. True, they all became colonies. They get told who their prime ministers are, for the most part, or if they even get allowed a semblance of election, they're told who the candidates can be, and they're fully controlled. They're not sovereign entities anymore, or even something even close to sovereign. Just ask the average Italian or Greek about sovereignty. They have none. So anyways, sooner or later, panic kicks in. That's one thing. And the panic kicked in. Then there's this little problem of people in general. You see, economics is called the gray science for a reason. Because if you're doing scientific theory and you're running an experiment under the exact same conditions, with the exact same experiment, 1,000 times, you should have the 1,000 times the exact same result. However, economics is human beings. And human beings are illogical, incomprehensible, emotional entities that also have this herd instinct. The herd runs, everybody runs after them. Well, not everybody, but a lot of them do, without ever thinking about it even. And then you have this national identity thing too. And what happened was the Asians, and especially the Middle Easterners, decided, no, we don't want you. We don't want your treasury bills. And rates skyrocketed. Well, at least on the short term of 3-4 days, they went up over a basis point. I'm sorry, basis point, over 1%, so like 100 basis points. That's what they call it. Each basis point is one hundredth of a percent. But that's huge money. We're talking about 150, 200 billion more dollars. To the average person, if your credit card goes up 3%, that's painful, but it's not deadly. But for the U.S. government's debt, 3% is a gigantic increase because the debt load is gigantic. So there you go. That's why Trump rolled back his percentages in a panic, because everybody was in a panic. What do we do now? Our big plan, our master supervillain plan to get everybody's money voluntarily all went askew. But then you got China. And China is the big dog in the house. And when they say, China and America are going to knock each other off, there's going to be no winners. Yeah, there is. We are. The Russians are going to be a winner. Because the 6% of Chinese imports that come from America are over half. That's $155 billion worth of imports. Half of that, half of that is agricultural products, base chemicals, and things like that. Everything that Russia provides, oil and gas. That's right, right. China buys American oil and gas, or bought. Beef imports, for example, yeah, we can't do the beef. We got enough beef for ourselves. We don't have enough beef for China. We do have the pork, though. Pigs multiply fast, baby. But Australia is now supplying, it's taken over the American share. I don't know how long the U.S. government is going to let Melbourne do that, but for right now, they've taken over the American share. So American ag sector just lost that. The rice and soybean, man, this is the best time for all this to start. This is planting season. So the Chinese are going to be wanting to buy a hell of a lot more soybean from Russia. We can plant that soybean right now, corn, etc. We grow it all. It's it's the West, and lots of Americans that think we're in perpetual winter. No. Even in the heart of the continent, you got temperatures ranging from minus 40 in the winter to plus 40 in the summer. And for those of you who don't understand Celsius, plus 40 is about 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, Russia gets hot. And lots of rain and fresh water. Western Russia is in the extreme, southern Russia is subtropical. We grow it all, baby. So there you go. We can feed the Chinese. We can take care of the oil. We can take care of the gas. Sanction our fleets all you want. They're not even leaving. The only territorial waters they'll leave is from Russia to North Korea. They would have to go around South Korea, but I'm pretty sure that there's enough of a military fleet that can escort these any transports to China. That if the South Koreans, the Japanese, or the Americans feel jumpy, they will get smacked. Especially since they're in missile range of everybody. That would be suicide. So go ahead. What can you do? They can feed the Chinese with everything. And the Chinese have cut off, because the Chinese don't have a monopoly on rare earths, just like we don't have a monopoly on uranium. Actually, Kazakhstan has the biggest uranium deposits in the world. What we do have, just like the Chinese, we do processing and enrichment of uranium to nuclear fuel and for medical purposes. We have over 70, almost 80% of world processing in Russia, and the Chinese have about 80% of the rare earth processing in China. So you can dig it up anywhere you want, but you're going to have to invest because there's talk about in the U.S. and the tailings from the coal mines and the coal plants. There's lots of rare earth. I'm sure there are. But what do you do with them? You have to process them. You have to purify them. That takes investment. And not just, here's $100 billion, give me my process. No, baby, it takes time. You have to build plants. You have to bring in the technology to do it. And the process has to be set up, technological processes. You have to train people. We're talking 2 years to set all this up. That's investment. And you better have enough in there for people to come in, unless it's the U.S. government that's sponsoring this. Money's got to come from somewhere. It takes time. So this is not just, and here we go. No, it doesn't work that way. Industry doesn't work that way. So there's a problem for it. And by the way, it's electrically highly intensive. So in the U.S. Electric system, electricity system in many places is barely holding on. I mean, and electric cars, by the way, what do you think they're running off of? That's right. There's a major additional strain on all the infrastructure you have. And when you go into anybody who believes in green energy, go watch Michael Moore. I know he's a liberal. And by the way, the liberals ate him alive for this documentary. And I don't support his views in this documentary, which are going to our extremist left-wing views, or liberal views. But the actual documentary is very good. It's called Planet of the People. And it shows what hypocrisy all of this green energy is. It doesn't work. It's just government payoffs to their friends. It's all crap. As a investigative film, it's actually very, very good. It's been out for about 10 years now. Most people have never seen it. The left has done everything they can to bury it. Used to be on YouTube, by the way, for free. Go see it. Go. And you get biomass generators in the U.S. are real popular in the Northeast U.S. because this is the concept. There's so much extra biomass. And biomass, we're talking about old wooden boards, paper, old furniture, things like that, that can be burned to generate electricity. We'll set up these biomass generators, or basically just they're burning wood. They're burning waste wood. And we'll set up electricity. Well, the little problem is that there really isn't that much waste wood. Blah! Not when you're trying to generate electricity. You got to burn a lot. And you're getting a hell of a lot less out of that wood than you are getting out of coal. Out of going in nuclear. Cheapest, best electricity you can ever find, honestly speaking. And a lot safer than what you think. Chernobyl was a CIA sabotage. Fukushima was an act of nature. A 9.4 Richter scale earthquake, which is 10 times more powerful than an 8. And the 7.6 that hit, so the 9.4 is about 100 times worse than the 7.6, 9.4, 9.6, 100 times worse. I mean, we're talking Japan as an island. The seabed in a matter of 2-3 seconds lifted up 30 meters, and the entire home islands moved toward Russia about 30-40 meters in 3 seconds. That's how much power that was. I mean, this is like dozens of nuclear bombs exploding. That's how much power the Earth released like that. So Fukushima had other issues, like the backup generators. The American company that designed Fukushima actually wanted to put those generators on a very high platform, over 40 meters high, so they'd be above any possible waves. The Japanese decided, nah, what the hell, we're not going to spend that much money building these big towers. We'll save money and just put it on the ground. Well, they did. Whoops, 30-meter wave. Woohoo! And then the plants overheat and you get big explosions. Steam, it's radioactive steam that's blowing out. But you get big explosions. Because if there's no electricity, in this case, since the electricity is knocked out, you have to have these backup generators that have to keep the coolant system running. Otherwise, the water overheats, and you get a nuclear, a radioactive steam explosion. Which is pretty damn big, by the way. And then you get the radioactive particles going up into the atmosphere and fall out. Anyways, I digress. So, there you go. Watch that movie. It's well worth watching. So there you go. That's there's a little problem for the U.S. government, the ag sector is something that China has plenty of backup, but the U.S. doesn't have markets to sell. So the ag sector in the U.S. is taking a big hit. At least they were smart enough to open the window of no tariffs for electronics. Because, smart enough. I'm sure Musk, I'm sure Apple, and all these big tech giants that were backing Trump this time around were screaming mad when this came out. So they gave him the window. Yeah, you can bring all that goods in. On the other hand, I think it's relatively stupid of the Chinese to make these laughing videos of, fat Americans will have to work in factories. Because they're really missing the point is that the average American wants the factories back, and a lot of those fat Americans will go work in those factories if the factory jobs are there and not taken by illegals or semi-legals. And that's the reality of it. So you're just antagonizing the Americans stupidly because Americans will do those jobs. They didn't leave those jobs. The jobs left them. Same thing as in Russia when you hear the same thing I heard in America. Oh, these are jobs that Russians won't do. That's why we have to pump in millions of labor immigrants. No, you do that because you save money on them. You just pay them lower wages. And that was proven in COVID when a lot of those migrants went back to Central Asia. And the construction jobs had to start paying more and more. And all of a sudden you got that threshold and Russians flooded in and started working construction again. Imagine that. Same thing in America. And I heard that first in America, of course. It's a lie. It's an obvious lie. It's big business, medium business trying to get out of, break the supply and demand cycle of labor by going around it. But those jobs left for China. They not because the workers didn't want to work, because they were going to save money. So yeah, from the Chinese point, that's stupid to do that. You're antagonizing, just pissing people off who really want those jobs back. So okay, yeah, they'll go labor. They'll go labor. But China's got other tools. The number one tool China has is boosting internal consumption. I mean, you're talking about 1.3 billion people that don't consume even nearly what Americans consume. And they need to consume only 16.7% of China's exports. That's all America represents, by the way, 16.7%. America doesn't eat up the lion's share. It doesn't. It used to once a long time ago. But the stereotypes need to get redefined. And I think the Chinese are well aware of that, and they're doing it. The other problem for at least for the Europeans is the Chinese are going to dump that extra production also on Europe's markets, which is going to be a big hit. Additionally, I think this will finally be the motivator for Peking to finally get serious about their banks. And what I mean by that is the Russian-Chinese trade is at about 200 billion, and it can't grow any higher. It can't grow any higher because the Chinese mainline banks are so paranoid of being sanctioned by the U.S. that they don't want to allow work with the Russian ruble. So trade is stuck with smaller banks that are willing, that don't have exposure. And China's talked a lot. Beijing has talked a lot about doing something about that, but really hasn't done anything major in these 3 years. And hoping still to make a deal with the U.S. that it'll avoid all that. Well, I think they finally come to the conclusion that, yeah, you're in the crosshairs, China, and they're going for your destruction. So there's no point in holding back anymore. Yeah, and China also has this, well, they call it a nuclear option because they hold about $1 trillion of American debt. They'll just drop it on the market. And it will be a big hit, but every year it becomes less and less of a hit because American debt is so gigantic. Another trillion flooding in, it's going to hurt, but it's not going to hurt as much as it would have hurt 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And in 5 years, it's going to hurt a lot less. So it's one of those, the longer you hold it, unless you're going to keep growing it, and then you're feeding the people that are out to destroy you, the longer you hold it, the less of a card it becomes. It goes from being a nuclear to an atomic to being, napalm to eventually just being a firecracker. Pop! So whether the Chinese use it or not, we'll live and see. They've sent a little signal by dropping 50 billion back on the market as we're serious. Well, okay. We'll see. But if Beijing takes a grapple with those major Chinese banks, then Russian-Chinese trade, bilateral trade, is going to grow quite a bit more. And eventually may replace or surpass, or some come close to surpassing. It's about a fourth the level of U.S.-Chinese trade. But it could easily, China imports 6% of its import quantities out of Russia. About the same amount as it imports out of the U.S. Interesting enough, just the export side is a lot less into Russia than and we don't want to be flooded either because we do have our own factories, massive reindustrialization going on, and we're fourth largest economy in the world by PPP, and we do have mass reindustrialization. We were never that deindustrialized, not on the level the U.S. became deindustrialized, but still. So we'd like to have more bilateral trade with China instead of unilateral. But we can easily replace what the U.S. Sells China. And it looks like the Chinese are going to go for that. Not just through us, Australia for as long as they can, other countries. So they've got options. U.S. not so much so. That's why, when Trump's waiting for them to come make a deal, they're not going to come. They're not. I think they've come to the decision it's time to play hardball to the end. Because if you're going to go after us, we're not going to wait for you, and we're definitely not going to sell you the gun and the bullet, and the black powder too, to put that round in our head, the controlled shot. So that's where we're at right now, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. It's interesting. God bless.